The Weight of Silence by Heather Gudenkauf. Chapter 8. Martin. I have visited all the places that Petra loves. The library, the school, the bakery, Kirsten's house, Ryan's house, Wycliffe Pool, and here, East Park. Now I walk among the swings, teeter-totter, jungle gym, slides, and the monkey bars, deserted due to the early hour. I even climb up the black train engine that the railroad donated to the city as a piece of play equipment. It amazes me that anyone with any sort of authority could believe such a machine could be considered a safe place for children to play. It was once a working engine, but of course all the dangerous pieces had been removed, the glass replaced with plastic, sharp corners softened, but still it is huge, imposing. Just the thing to offer up to small children who have no fear and who feel that they could fly if given the opportunity. I have seen children climb the many ladders that lead to small nooks and crannies in the engine. The children would play an intricate game they dubbed train robbery, for which there were many rules, often unspoken, and often developed on the spot as the game progressed. I have seen them leap from the highest point at the top of the train and land on the ground with a thump that, to me, sounds bone-crushing. However, inevitably, the children sprang back up and brushed at the dirt that clung to their behinds, no worse for wear. I, too, climbed to the highest point at the top of the black engine and scanned the park for any sign of Petra and Callie. For once, I feel the exhilaration that the children must feel, the feeling of being at a pinnacle, where the only place to go now is down. It is a breathtaking sensation, and I feel my legs wobble with uncertainty as I look around me. They are nowhere to be seen. I lower myself to a sitting position, my legs straddling the great engine. I look at my hands, dusty with the soot that is so ingrained on the train that it will never completely wash away, and think of Petra. The night that Petra was born, I stayed in the hospital with Fielda. I did not leave her side. I settled myself in a comfortable chair next to her hospital bed. I was surprised at the luxuriousness of the birthing suites, the muted wallpaper, the lights that dimmed with the twist of a switch, the bathroom with a whirlpool bathtub. I was pleased that Fielda would give birth in such a nice place, tended to by a soothing nurse who would place a capable hand on Fielda's sweating forehead and whisper encouragement to her. I was born in Missouri, in my home on a hog farm, as were my 7 younger brothers and sisters. I was well accustomed to the sounds of a woman giving birth, and when Fielda began emitting the same powerful, frightening sounds, I became lightheaded and had to step out of the hospital room for a moment. When I was young, I would watch my pregnant mother perform her regular household duties with the same diligence to which I was accustomed. However, I remember seeing her grasp the kitchen counter as a contraction overtook her. When her proud, stern face began to crumble in pain, I became even more watchful. Eventually, she would send me over to my aunt's house to retrieve her sister and mother to help her with the birth. I would run the half-mile swiftly, grateful for the reprieve from the anxious atmosphere that had invaded our well-ordered home. In the summers, I would go barefoot, the soles of my feet becoming hard and calloused, impervious to the clumps of dirt and rocks. I could barely feel the ground beneath me. I preferred to wear shoes, but my mother only allowed me to wear them on Sundays and to school. I hated that people could see my exposed feet, the dirt that wedged itself under my toenails. I had the habit of standing on one leg with the other resting on top of it, my toes curled so that only the top of one dirty foot was visible. My grandmother would laugh at me and call me stork. My aunt thought that it was quite amusing, especially when I came to get them to help my mother deliver the baby. She would discharge a big, bellowing laugh that was delightful to the ears, so much so that even I could not help but smile, even though the laugh was at my expense. We would climb into my grandmother's rusty Ford and drive back to our farm. We would pass by the hog house, and my father would wave at us and smile hugely. This was his signal that a new son or daughter would be born soon. In name, I was a farm boy, but I could not be bothered by the minutiae of the farm. My interest was in books and numbers. My father, a kind, simple man, would shake his head when I would show no interest in farrowing sows. But still, I had my chores to do around the farm. Mucking out of the pens and feeding buckets of slop to the hogs were a few of my duties. However, I refused to have any part of butcher time. The thought of killing any living creature made me ill, though I had no qualms about eating pork. On Butcher Day, I would conveniently disappear. I would retrieve my shoes from the back of my closet and tie them tightly, brushing away any scuffs, and I would walk into town 3 miles away. When I reached the outskirts, I would spit onto my fingers and bend down to wipe away the dust and grime from my shoes. I would double-check to make sure my library card, wrinkled and limp from frequent use, was still there as I stepped into the library. There, I would spend hours reading books on coin collecting and history. The librarian knew me by name and would often set aside books she knew I would enjoy. "Don't worry about bringing these back in 2 weeks," she said conspiratorially, handing me the books tucked carefully into the canvas bag I had brought with me. She knew it could be difficult for me to make the trip into town every few weeks, but more often than not, I would find a way. I would slink back to the farm, the butchering done for the day, and my father would be waiting on the front porch, rolling his cigarette between his fingers, drinking some iced tea that my mother had brewed. I would marvel at his size as I slowly approached my home. knowing the disappointment was awaiting me. My father was an enormous man, in height and girth, the buttons of his work shirts straining against the curve of his belly. People who did not know my father would shrink away from his vastness, but were quickly drawn into his gentle manner as they got to know him. I cannot recall a time when my father raised his voice to my mother or my brothers or sisters. One terrible day, when I was 12, I returned from the library after shirking my farm responsibilities, and my father was leaning against the wooden fence at the edge of the hog house, awaiting my return. His normally placid face was set in anger, and his arms were crossed across his wide chest. He watched my approach with an unwavering gaze, and I had the urge to drop my books and run away. I did not. I continued my walk to the spot where he was standing and looked down at my church shoes, smeared with dust and dirt. "Martin," he said in a grave voice I did not recognize. "Martin, look at me." I raised my eyes, and I looked up into his, and felt the weight of his disappointment in me. I thought I could smell the blood from butchering on him. "Martin, we're family, and our family business happens to be hog farming. I know you are ashamed of that." I shook my head quickly. That was not what I thought, but I didn't know how to make him understand. He continued, "I know that the filth of what I do shames you, and that I don't have your same schoolin' shames you. But this is who I am, a hog farmer, and it's who you are too, at least for now. I can't read your big fancy books or understand some of those big words you use, but what I do put is food on your table and those shoes on your feet. To do that, I need the help of my family. You're the oldest. You gotta help. You find the way that you can help, Martin, and you tell me what that is. But you got to do your share. You can't be running off into town when there's work to be done. Understand?" I nodded, the heat of my own shame rising off my face. "You think on it, Martin, tonight. You think on it and tell me in the morning what's your part gonna be." Then he walked away from me, his head hanging low, his hands stuffed into the back of his work pants. I slept little that night, trying to find a way that I could be useful to my family. I did not want to mind my younger brothers and sisters, and I was not very handy with building or fixing things. What was I good at? I wondered that night. I was a good reader, and I was good at mathematics. Those were my strengths. I pondered on these the entire night, and when my father awoke the next morning, I was waiting for him at our kitchen table. "I think I know how I can help, Daddy," I said shyly, and he rewarded me with his familiar lopsided grin. "I knew you would, Martin," he replied and sat down next to me. I laid it all out for him, the financial records of the farm, noting in as kind a way as possible the sloppiness and inaccuracies that they contained. I could help, I told him, by keeping track of the money. I would find ways of saving and ways of making the farm more efficient. He was pleased with my plan, and I was appreciative of his faith in me. We never flourished as a family farm, but our quality of life improved. We were able to update our utilities and install a telephone. We could afford shoes for each of the children all year round. Though I was still the only one who chose to wear them in the summer. One winter day when I was 16, soon before my father's birthday, I took the farm truck into town to the only department store which sold everything from groceries to appliances. I spent 2.5 hours looking at the 2 models of television sets they had available, weighing the pros and cons of each. I finally decided upon the 12-inch version with rabbit ear antennae. I settled it carefully in the cab of the truck next to me, wrapped in blankets to cushion any jostling that would occur in the winding dirt roads, and returned to the farm. When my father came in that evening, after taking care of the hogs, we were gathered in the living room, all 9 of us, blocking the view of my father's birthday present. "What's going on here?" he asked, as it was rare that we were all congregated in one place that was not the supper table. My mother began to sing "Happy Birthday" to my father, and we all joined in. At the end of the song, we parted to reveal the tiny television set that rested upon an old bookshelf. "What's this?" my father asked in disbelief. "What did you go and do?" We were all grinning up at him, and my little sister, Lottie, who was 7, squealed, "Turn it on, Daddy! Turn it on!" My father stepped forward and turned the knob to on, and after a moment, the black and white image of a variety show filled the screen. We all laughed in delight and crowded around the television to listen. My father fiddled with the volume button until we were satisfied with the noise level, and we all watched in rapt attention. Later, my father pulled me aside and thanked me. He rested his hand on the back of my neck and looked into my eyes. We were nearly the same height now. "My boy," he whispered. Those were just about the sweetest words I have ever heard. Until, that is, Petra uttered "Dada" for the first time. Holding Petra for the first time after Fielda's long labor was a miracle to me. I had worked for years trying to shed my farm boy roots and rid myself of any twang in an accent, to present myself as a cultured, intelligent man, not the son of an uneducated hog farmer. I was dumbfounded at the perfection that I held in my arms. The long, dark eyelashes, the wild mass of dark hair on top of her cone-shaped head, the soft fold of skin beneath her neck, the earnest sucking motion she made with her tiny lips. To me, all amazing. On top of the engine, I place my face in my dirty hands. I cannot find her, and I cannot bear the disgrace of returning home to Fielda without our daughter. I am shamed again. I have once again shirked my duties, this time as a father. And I imagine, again, the disappointment on my own father's face.